Virtual currencies, perhaps most notably Bitcoin, have captured the imagination of some, struck fear among others, and confused the heck out of the rest of us.
When we first found Bitcoin, or first came across it, it sounds like a huge idea. It's kind of crazy, and it's not crazy to be very skeptical and say sort of like, I think Cameron Bush said, you know, this is either like huge or total bull.
First of all, there's two kinds of average people. There's the average person who has already heard of Bitcoin, and there's the average person who hasn't, right? So, I mean, for the first category, it's a bit easier because if you understand what Bitcoin is, and you understand that it's a peer-to-peer digital currency, and you understand that if you want to have a digital currency that's decentralized, then you need some kind of database to store how much money everyone has, right?
I'd been interested in digital currencies. I'd been interested in cryptography and its application in digital currencies since the mid-90s. But I drifted away from that space, and I heard about this Bitcoin thing, and I thought, gamblers, nerd money, not interesting. Now, that's the reaction pretty much everyone has. In fact, Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, when announcing Bitcoin, was extremely skeptical of their own creation. They weren't quite sure this was going to work or that there was anything there. And then pretty much everyone from that point on started off with, that's not going to work. That can't possibly work. That was my reaction too. Fortunately, the second time, which I remember quite clearly towards the end of 2012, when I came across Bitcoin for the second time, the person who talked about it had introduced a link to the white paper that explained how it worked. Now, my background is in computer science. I have a master's degree in distributed systems, which happened to prime me perfectly to read and understand this paper. And I started reading it. I was like, oh, let's see what this is. So I started reading it, and about page 3, I froze. I'm like, this is not what I thought. And I keep reading, and by the end of that white paper, my life had been firmly derailed, completely. What I grasped at that moment was that this was an extremely significant invention. We can have a digital currency without a central point. And with a digital currency without a central point, there's nothing to shut down. And if there's nothing to shut down, oh dear, this might actually work. And if all you're looking at is the price of Bitcoin, the opportunity to invest, the crazy messages that are coming from the media from every side, you will be missing the fundamental point. The fundamental point being, this is a new platform, a platform for trust that is global, open, completely borderless, and egalitarian. And this platform transforms not just finance. Currency is only the first application on this, the Internet of money. It is not just money for the Internet. It is a full-blown platform for trust.
It's not an app. It's not a company. I think it's closest in description to something like Wikipedia. We can see everything on Wikipedia. It's a composite view that's constantly changing and being updated. We can also track those changes over time on Wikipedia, and we can create our own wikis, because at their core, they're just a data infrastructure. On Wikipedia, it's an open platform that stores words and images and the changes to that data over time. On the blockchain, you can think of it as an open infrastructure that stores many kinds of assets. It stores the history of custodianship, ownership, and location for assets like the digital currency Bitcoin, other digital assets like a title of ownership of IP. It could be a certificate, a contract, real-world objects, even personal identifiable information.
Listen to me. Everyone will be online.
So let's break the world up into two buckets. Let's look at the banked and documented world, and let's look at the unbanked and undocumented world. So the green bucket has about 4 billion people living in it, in places like the United States, the European Union. And then we look at places like China, we look at places like India and Brazil, and we start moving into the unbanked and undocumented world, places like Sudan, places like Afghanistan. Well, what's the point? Well, the point is, if you were to look at every meaningful metric, from infant mortality to literacy rates, quality of life, it tends to get better with the more financial services and the more access to documentation that you tend to have.
Today, Western democracies, they're cool. They're liberal, right? So they can't do colonialism the way they used to do it, at the end of a bayonet. Not for the most part. So colonialism now is more subtle. It's wrapped in a nice little package. We just call it competitive commerce, globalization, opening of borders. Globalization, as it is understood and practiced, is nothing more than good old-fashioned colonialism. Only now it's not delivered with force, it's delivered with financial embargoes, it's delivered with financial controls. It's delivered with coercion that implies that if you don't play along with the games, you get cut off from the US dollar, you get cut off from the SWIFT network, you get cut off from access to international banking, you get cut off from the IMF, you get cut off from access to international commerce. Globalization is not something you and I readily participate in. It is something that multinational companies and powerful countries can use to set themselves outside the law, to arbitrage jurisdictions, to shop around for the most convenient, corruptible, lowest taxation environment where they can deliver financial colonialism wrapped as globalization. Globalization has a negative connotation among most people because, to the average person, all it's delivered is lawless corporations, exploitation, and tariffs, ironically. What cryptocurrencies do is they change the nature of globalization from something that is inherently centralized and available only to the most powerful, the most disinterested and distanced corporations, to you, directly, as individuals. Not all of us. For the time being, just the few who are fortunate enough to have the education, the access, the capital to participate, but every day more and more people can use cryptocurrencies to achieve a decentralized form of globalization, one that allows individuals to shop around for jurisdictions, to arbitrage between currencies, to pick the law that serves their interests.
Blockchain got recognized because of Bitcoin. It was a fundamental technology for Bitcoin. What an incredible thing Bitcoin is. It's still here working after I don't know how many years it's been, and it hasn't needed to be changed, and it's not owned or controlled by any company. So we said blockchain now allows you to have no central control. Everything's diversified, and because everything has records that are duplicates of each other, it's totally trustable. There can't be any mistaken records in there. It's kind of like in 2000. We looked at the internet and said, look at all these things that could be done by the internet that would change our life someday, and we'll really be onto it.
Do you see
all the companies invested, and then it went bust. It went bust. The only year that San Jose, California ever lost population was 2003. But you know what? Look ahead now, 2018. Everything we do in our life is improved by the internet. We have apps for everything. So it eventually happens, just that culture doesn't want to change rapidly. And I see blockchain as being in the same sort of place right now. Might be a bubble, but it's on the right track. Bitcoin, though, sets such incredible high standards. Bitcoin is there and nobody runs it and owns it, and yet it works so well. And we think, oh, that will be the outcome of everything else. Bitcoin is limited to how many Bitcoin can ever be produced, unlike real currency, which governments can just create as much more of as they ever want to. You know, we're getting down to something that's more realistic and defined by nature. Things defined by nature mean a lot more to me than things defined by human beings.
At first glance, you may think this is an investment opportunity. It's not. That's not what's special about that. If you look at the early internet and you decide, great, we can make money trading Yahoo, you're missing the point. We can change history. We can change humanity with these technologies. These technologies offer us an opportunity of empowerment for individuals all around the world, an opportunity for connection. And just like the internet did that for communicating, these new technologies, cryptocurrencies, digital currencies based on open public blockchains, give us an opportunity to create a fully interconnected global economy that is completely peer-to-peer, completely flat, and that discards many of the trappings of the past. Now, some of you probably work in some of those trappings of the past. And you may be feeling a bit uncomfortable because, well, banking has a few centuries of operating without much competition, and it's never faced competition from the internet. The internet's coming. It's called Bitcoin, and it's just the first one, and it's going to take finance by storm.
BitByBit.
Do your homework and stop playing on that bloody computer.